crazy. If you think about technology and you think about all the technology breakthroughs we've had over the last century, we can build a rocket, we can put a man in it, and we can send him to the moon, and we can bring him back. And on the other side, we can get an atom, and we can smash it into component parts that we didn't even know existed. Not only that, we can get a computer screen now, and I can be on the other side of the world to you, and we can converse real time and see each other. Amazing, amazing what we've been able to accomplish. But let's think about the global challenges that we have today. And have we been able to solve any of them? They're the same challenges we've had for thousands of years. We have war, we have poverty, we have suppression, and we have oppression, amongst other things. We've not been able to stop any of those things, even with this amazing technology that we've developed. That got me thinking as to what was the common denominator between these global challenges. And what I realized the global denominator was you and me. It was us, it was us, it was humans. We're the ones that have caused the poverty, we've caused the war, the suppression, the oppression, and we carry on doing it even though we've got all these technological breakthroughs. So that started to make me think as to why is that the case? We've got bright people, we've got bright technology. Why are we not solving these problems? See, if you think about what's happened with society over the years, we've gone from creating businesses, individuals have created businesses, and other businesses have come up because they want to sell to those other businesses. So we got B2B. And then suddenly we woke up one day and said, but hold on a minute, it's consumers that are actually fueling the businesses, so we now need B2C. So we get B2C, and then just recently, Brian Kramer came out and said, but the consumers are human. We need to go H to H. We need to go human to human. And that way we can sell to them. Well, my argument is, if we want to solve these global challenges, we've got to stop going H to H, and we've got to start going S to S, soul to soul. What do I mean by soul to soul? Well, let me ask all of us a question. We all have people that we love around us, right? Let me ask you, can you honestly say you know what their darkest moment was? That moment when they wanted to give up on everything in their life. They didn't think they could go on. Do you know what impact that incident had on them and everyone around them? Do you know their happiest moment? That moment when they could literally be ripped apart with joy, and the impact that that had on them and also all the others around them. And we say we care for them. We say that we love them. What kind of love or care is that? What's happened is we've gone S to S, meaning surface to surface, but we haven't gone soul to soul. What do I mean by soul to soul? Soul to soul is about quality interaction between two beings. That's all it is. Let me give you an example of how I started out or stumbled across soul to soul many years ago. You can probably guess where I was born, right? It's a bit obvious. I was born in the UK, back in the 70s, quite a long time ago. And if you can imagine what it was like for a 3-year-old to come to India. I came to India in the height of summer in 1974. And for me, it was a bizarre experience. If you can imagine, England is cold, it's efficient, it's orderly, not so many people, and coming to India was the diametric opposite. So I remember being on the plane, I remember them opening the door and suddenly feeling this whoosh of sweltering heat, and smelling these smells I'd never smelt before. And you know, when you're younger, you're kind of a bit smaller than everyone else, so you can smell everything and see everything much more magnified. And it was really, really hard for me. I came out and I was passed from relative to relative like a cricket ball. And do you know what I did? I cried. I cried and I cried and I cried. This was so different to everything I'd been brought up with. For 2 days, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I didn't talk to anyone. And 2 days later, my grandmother said, enough is enough. She came to me and she said, what's wrong? And I said, I don't like it here. I want to go home. It's so different. You don't look after your people. There's so many poor people here. I want to go home. And she picked me up and she took me outside. It was the middle of the day and it was hot in oh so smelly Delhi. And she took me to a beggar who used to live outside where we lived. And I remember him because he didn't have a leg. He had loads of flies around him and didn't have any teeth. And she said, ask him whatever you want to ask him. So I did. I said to him, Uncle, I said, why are you living here? I'll get you a passport. Come and live with me in England. It's nice and clean and tidy. We'll look after you, not like here. And do you know what he said to me? He looked at me and he spoke with his eyes. He said, when you go to sleep at night, what do you see? And I said, I see my mummy kissing me. And he said, no, what's the last thing you see? And I thought, and I said, the ceiling. And he goes, do you know what I see? I see the stars, I see the moon, I see the sky. Why would I give that up to live in a cage like you? Now imagine that. I was aged 3. My whole reality transformed. I'd been thinking about life as patches. England, India, rich, poor, male, female. And in one stroke, he taught me something completely different. He gave me an idea that was woven into the fabric of my life and has stayed with me ever since. He really, really made me think about the quality of interactions we have. And everything I've done since then has been about building communities, getting people together, and interweaving lives, not networking. And over the years, at that moment, sorry, I should tell you, at that moment, it was the moment I decided I was going to move back to India. At some point, my cousins laughed, my family laughed, but you know what? 8 years ago, with my husband, 7 months pregnant with number 2, I moved here because this is the place that I wanted to be. I told you that over my life, what I've been doing was creating and interweaving. I started with doing an international evening at my school, where we used to, you know, living in England, a lot of racism, we used to shun our own cultures. I brought them out. And I continued to do things like that. Now, being an accountant by trade and being married to a mathematician, I know you're on a day off, it's NMIMS, you're a management school at the end of it. But what I realized was there was an equation that actually made a lot of sense to explain this type of transformation. And this is the equation. Time multiplied by the quality of interaction is proportional to the transformation that's caused. Think about it again. I had very little time with that beggar, but the quality of interaction that he and I had that day meant that there was a massive transformation in my life. Teachers, you know what this is like. You're given a small window of time to teach your students. If you inspire them, you're going to weave your subject into their lives for the rest of their lives. If you don't inspire them, they get patchy knowledge. Students, you don't get off light though. At the end of the day, you come to lectures thinking, oh, this is going to be no good, I'm not going to learn anything. How on earth are you going to learn anything if that's your impression in your head? So instead of becoming more and more patchy, how do you liven up the classes? How do you interact with your professor? Because unless we stop creating patches and start creating tapestries, we're never going to change things. Okay, so how does that come back to solving those global challenges we talked about earlier? Well, think about those global challenges. Our forefathers created them, and we are accelerating them. In the business world, when you have a problem, what you do is you throw money at it. You throw money at it because you think that that's going to help you find the answers. What we haven't worked out is there's actually a new currency that we should be using. And today here at TEDxNMIMS Bombay, I want us to invent a new currency. It's a new currency that's freely available, doesn't need any governments, doesn't need any legislation. It's made up of 2 really important qualities. It's made up of time, and it's made up of quality interaction. All I'm asking you to do is to start valuing your time. And what I'd like you to do with your time is to consider putting it into a time fund. Investment bankers, they have all these funds of different currencies. Why can't we create a global time fund? What's the purpose of it? The purpose is to share time. Do you really think if 7 billion people on this planet got together, do you really think we couldn't cure poverty? That we wouldn't be able to stop war or mass destruction? 7 billion people? If we put time together in a time fund where we start sharing time by trying to come up with solutions, and we're all on the same page, of course we can do it. Okay, there's cynics in the audience who are probably saying, no, not possible. I want to share a story with you. When I was 25, I moved to Romania, qualified as a chartered accountant, working as an auditor. A couple of years later, I realized that I much more enjoyed teaching my staff how to audit than actually auditing itself. So I set up a training institute. Within a year, it was so successful that we were bought out by a UK-listed company. And they opened an international division, and they asked me to run it. I was 28 at the time, so it was a great opportunity. Their first challenge to me was, you've set up this fantastic business in Romania, we want you to replicate it and open a training school in Poland. And after you've done Poland, we'll give you a year, go on to Hungary, go on to Ukraine, go on to other countries. Not one to not take a challenge. I said, okay. Turned up in Poland in December 1999, just to be faced with a lot of negativity. Nobody wanted our training, nobody thought our business would do well. Poland was in recession, and thank you, Vandana, but no thank you. And I remember on the 18th of December 1999, sitting in my hotel room, just like that 3-year-old self, crying. Crying and crying and crying. Now, through the blurred tears, I noticed something being shoved under my door, and it was a newspaper. And it had an advert for a business mixer that was happening that evening. It was -20 outside, and it was very warm in my hotel room. I suddenly thought, should I go or not? I put my clothes on, and I decided to go. I got there, and I almost turned around. It was a networking event. There were 500 people, but 497 of them were men in their 40s and 50s, wearing dark suits and not looking very inviting. I was about to leave when suddenly in the corner I noticed 3 women. I went straight up to those women and I said, oh, it's so nice to see women here. And they started laughing and they said, who are you? Soul to soul. I literally burst into tears in front of them and I said, I'm here to open a business. I just feel though, after this first week, there's no way I'm going to manage it. And do you know what they did? All 3 of them just gave me a massive hug, gave me a drink and said, tell us. After a couple of minutes, one of them asked for my phone, and within 10 minutes, I had the phone number of an estate agent who would find me a house, a vegetarian restaurant, which is really important in Poland if you're a vegetarian because they don't know the meaning of the word. They'd given me telephone numbers of their friends, a taxi company that spoke English, and so much more. In the space of 10 minutes, my future in Poland started to become secure. Over the next 6 months, I met up with those friends. They became my closest friends there. We went on holiday to South America. They introduced me to other people. One of the people they introduced me to phoned me up one day and said, I've been approached by the BBC. They're interested in doing a documentary about Brits living abroad. I want to put your name forward. I said, okay. So they came and filmed me for 3 days. This was 2000. And it was fun. And after 8 months in post-production, that show aired in the UK. Now, that night that it aired, a university friend of mine happened to get home and was channel flicking on the telly. And he saw me. And the next day, he sent me an email. And he said, oh, I didn't realise you were a superstar. Congratulations for being on the television. When are you next back in the UK? We should meet up. 3 weeks later, I was back in the UK, and we did meet up. And a year later, we got married. So you may think that one incident may not change your mind. You may think one quality interaction won't change your life. My life changed inexplicably on the 18th of December 1999. And I'll ever be grateful for that. So, I've talked about our time fund. I've talked about my own experiences, both at 3 and also later on. And there's still cynics in the audience that says this can't work. Well, I'm putting a challenge to you. My challenge to you, to every single person who's here, and every person who watches this TED Talk anywhere in the world, I want you to do this. Tomorrow, go out and find someone that you wouldn't normally interact with, and interact with them for just 5 minutes. And I want you to do the same thing every day, just for 5 minutes, for a whole week. And at the end of that week, I want you to send me an email. Email address up there, and I want you to answer these 3 questions. What did you have in common? Is there something non-financial that you can help them with? And thirdly, how did you feel after doing this? And believe me, it will transform your life. You know, there was a guy in Pune a long time ago. He lived under duress at the Aga Khan Palace. His name was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And he used to spin thread. That's what he used to spend his time doing. And he used to say, be the change you want to see in this world. Well, you know what? Maybe it's time for us to become those threads and weave the change we want to see in the world. Thank you.